They mentioned some criticisms of the MBTI, particularly how it simplifies Jung's ideas. What are your thoughts on that?
It's true that the MBTI with its 4 dichotomies offers a more streamlined version of Jung's theory. The 8 cognitive functions, as we've discussed, provide a much more nuanced and detailed understanding of personality.
So is the MBTI just a stepping stone? Should we all be diving deep into Jungian theory instead?
I wouldn't necessarily say that the MBTI, while imperfect, can be a great starting point for self-exploration.
It's like a good intro.
Yeah, exactly. It introduces key concepts in a more accessible way. However, for those who really want to go deeper, exploring Jung's original work can be incredibly rewarding.
It's like any field of study, right? You start with the basics and then delve deeper if you want to develop more sophisticated understanding.
Exactly. And the beauty of this journey is that there's always more to discover.
Yeah, I love that. There's always more.
The more you explore these concepts, the more you learn about yourself and others. It's a lifelong process of self-discovery.
I love that. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we do need to address the elephant in the room. We've talked about the potential downsides of the MBTI, but are there any criticisms or controversies surrounding Jung's theories in general? I mean, his work is pretty old now. Does it still hold up in modern psychology?
That's an important question, and it's one we should never shy away from. Yeah, Jung's ideas have been incredibly influential, but like any psychological theory, they have also been subject to scrutiny and debate over the years.
Okay, so let's get into it. What are some of those criticisms?
Well, some critics argue that certain Jungian concepts, like the collective unconscious, lack empirical evidence. Others question the validity of his typology system, pointing out that it's based more on observation and intuition than rigorous scientific testing.
So not all sunshine and roses, then.
Right. It's important to approach any psychological theory with a critical eye, recognizing both its strengths and limitations. Jung's work offers valuable insights into the human psyche, but it's not a definitive answer to all our questions about personality.
So where does that leave us? Should we take Jung's theories with a grain of salt?
I think it's more about recognizing that psychology is a constantly evolving field. Okay. Jung's work was groundbreaking for its time, and many of his ideas continue to resonate with people today. But as with any scientific discipline, new research and perspectives emerge over time.
So it's not about blindly accepting or rejecting any one theory, but rather using them as lenses through which to understand ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. Yeah, and that brings us back to the core message of our deep dive today, which is self-discovery. Whether you're fascinated by Jungian archetypes or drawn to the simplicity of the MBTI, the real value lies in the journey of understanding yourself better.
I love that. It's about using these tools, these frameworks, to illuminate our own inner landscapes, those fascinating patterns that make us who we are.
It's a journey.
And speaking of inner landscapes, I think it's time for us to venture into the final part of our deep dive.
Oh, yes.
When we return, we'll explore how you can take everything we discussed and actually apply it to your own life in a tangible and meaningful way. So stick around, there's more to come. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into psychological types. We've gone from the foundations of Jungian theory to the very popular MBTI. We've explored those 8 fascinating cognitive functions, too.
It's been quite the journey.
It really has. But before we wrap up, let's make sure we bring it all home for our listeners.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about theory, but how can we actually use this knowledge to improve our lives? You know, that's the question. Because knowing your MBTI type is one thing, but what do we do with that information?
What's fascinating is that understanding psychological types, isn't just about self-awareness. Okay. It's about empowering yourself to make more conscious choices in your life.
Okay, I like that. So how do we go from, understanding our type to actually making those choices? What are some concrete examples of how this all plays out in real life?
Let's start with decision-making. Imagine you're facing a tough choice at work, something with big implications. If you know you lean heavily on your thinking function, you might instinctively prioritize logic and efficiency. But by understanding your function stack, you can remind yourself to check in with your feeling side as well. Consider the emotional impact of your decision on your team.
So it's not just about the bottom line.
Exactly.
So we're using our knowledge of our functions to create more balance in our approach, not just defaulting to our dominant mode.
Right.
Even though we have preferences, we can learn to flex those mental muscles and tap into other functions when we need them.
Precisely. And this applies to relationships as well.
Oh, relationships for sure.
Let's say you're an introvert who really needs a lot of alone time to recharge. You're in a relationship with an extrovert who just thrives on social interaction.
Classic.
Without understanding these fundamental differences, resentment can build.
Yeah, I could see that.
You might feel smothered and think, I feel neglected.
Totally. It's like that classic comedy trope where one partner drags the other one to a party and one of them ends up hiding in the bathroom for some peace and quiet.
Exactly. Yeah. But imagine if, instead of playing out that tired scenario, both partners understand their needs and preferences. Yeah, they can create a dynamic that works for both of them. Maybe they agree on, dedicated time for socializing. Okay. And dedicated time for solo activities.
So it's all about compromise.
Exactly. Yeah. They learn to appreciate those differences instead of seeing them as obstacles.
So instead of those differences being a source of frustration, they become strengths.
Precisely. And this goes beyond romantic relationships. Okay. This understanding can be helpful in any interpersonal situation.
Wow.
From navigating family dynamics to working effectively in teams. Imagine knowing that your colleague thrives on structure and detailed plans, while you're more spontaneous and big picture oriented.
I can see that.
You can anticipate potential friction points and adjust your communication styles accordingly.
Oh, this is all starting to make so much sense. It's like we've been given a secret decoder ring for human behavior.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It is. Suddenly, all those confusing interactions start to make sense when you understand the, underlying motivations and preferences that are at play.
I wouldn't go that far, but it certainly provides a framework, for understanding why people behave the way they do. And that understanding can lead to more empathy, compassion, and even more effective communication.
Instead of getting frustrated by someone's, seemingly illogical behavior, right? You can pause and ask yourself, what function might be driving this behavior? How can I connect with them in a way that respects their preferences?
I think that's such a crucial point.
It is. It's not about using these types to, pigeonhole people or put them in boxes. Or it's about using this knowledge to cultivate deeper understanding and more meaningful connections with the people in our lives.
Absolutely. Because ultimately, isn't that what we're all searching for?
What's that?
To feel seen, understood, and valued for who we truly are.
Beautifully said. But before we say goodbye, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier. Our source material mentioned that MBTI is just a snapshot in time. So, how much can we really rely on these types to define who we are? Can we change our function stack, or are we stuck with it? This is something I've always wondered about.
That's a great question, and one that's still debated among psychologists. Some believe that our function stack is relatively fixed, while others believe it can evolve over time through conscious effort and life experiences.
So it's not necessarily life sentence. There's potential for growth and change. Because I think some people might hear this and feel like, well, if I'm wired a certain way, that's it, I'm stuck.
I firmly believe that we have the power to shape our own personalities to some extent.
Okay, good.
It's not about erasing who we are, right? But rather about becoming aware of our patterns and actively working on developing those less dominant functions.
So we can change.
Yes. We can become more adaptable, more well-rounded individuals, not just by accepting our natural inclinations, but also by stretching beyond them.
That's such an empowering message. So it's not just about understanding who we are, but also about who we have the potential to become. It's a journey of self-discovery, not a destination.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this whole field of study. It's ongoing, it's dynamic, and it's full of possibilities.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about myself and others. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners before we sign off?
If I could leave you with one thought, it would be this. Embrace the complexity of human personality. Don't get too caught up in labels or categories, okay? Instead, use these tools as starting points for exploration, for understanding the unique blend of functions that makes you, you. And remember, everyone you meet is operating from their own unique function stack, their own internal landscape. Approaching those interactions with curiosity and empathy can open up a whole new world of understanding and connection.
Beautifully said. And remember, this is just the beginning of your journey. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing. And as always, we've got a ton of resources in the show notes for you to dive deeper into Jungian psychology and the MBTI.
So much to learn.
So check those out and let us know what you discover.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Subscribe to Jung's Daily Wisdom with Cecilia. Unlock a new story each day and journey deeper into the mysteries of your own mind.